Make a weapon. Part 1. The emergency klaxons echoed through the massive space station as Captain Zarath of the Galactic Defense Coalition rushed toward the war room. Her 6 legs clicked against the metal flooring, each step betraying her anxiety. The Devourer fleet had appeared at the edge of their system 3 days ago, and their demands were simple yet terrifying. Surrender or face extinction. The war room buzzed with desperate activity. Representatives from 12 different species huddled around holographic displays, their faces showing the same grim expression that transcended biological differences. The Kronak military advisors, massive bear-like creatures with 4 arms, gestured wildly at tactical projections. The ethereal wisp floated near the ceiling, their gaseous forms shimmering with distress. Even the normally stoic silicon-based builders had developed visible cracks in their rocky exteriors. Status report, Zarath demanded as she entered the chamber. General Corax, a towering Kronak with scars covering his gray fur, turned toward her. It's not good, Captain. The Devourers have given us 7 standard days to produce advanced weapons capable of matching their technology, or they'll reduce every inhabited world in this sector to cosmic dust. The room fell silent except for the soft humming of life support systems. Everyone knew the reputation of the Devourers. They had consumed 17 civilizations in the past century, leaving nothing but dead worlds and asteroid fields in their wake. Their technology was centuries ahead of anything the Coalition possessed. What about our existing arsenal? Asked Dr. Veltar, the lead WISP scientist. Her voice carried the melodic quality typical of her species, but now it trembled with fear. Useless, replied Chief Engineer Stoneheart, a builder whose granite-like skin seemed to darken with each word. Their shields can deflect our plasma cannons like they're throwing pebbles. Our missile systems can't even lock onto their ships. We might as well be fighting with sticks and stones. Zarath's mandibles clicked together nervously. As the station commander, the responsibility for finding a solution fell squarely on her shoulders. What about the research projects? Anything in development that might help? The scientists exchanged glances before Dr. Veltar spoke again. We have several theoretical weapons in early development stages. The quantum disruption cannon might be ready in 15 years. The molecular disintegration beam needs at least a decade of testing. The gravitational wave projector exists only as mathematical equations. 15 years. General Corax's roar echoed through the chamber. We have 7 days, 7. A small voice spoke up from the corner of the room. What about asking for help from other species? Everyone turned to look at Communications Officer Pipka, a young Zephyrian whose blue skin had turned pale with stress. Her suggestion hung in the air like a lifeline. We've already contacted every coalition member, Zarath replied. The Altrurians are too far away to provide military assistance in time. The Nexus Empire is dealing with their own border conflicts. The Crystal Confederation doesn't have weapons technology advanced enough to make a difference. The weight of hopelessness settled over the room like a heavy blanket. 12 advanced civilizations, and none of them could produce a weapon capable of stopping the Devourers in less than a week. Wait, Pipka said hesitantly. What about the humans? A collective groan filled the room. Several species rolled their eyes while others made dismissive gestures with whatever appendages they possessed. The humans? General Corax snorted. Those primitive creatures barely developed faster than light travel 50 years ago. They're still using chemical propulsion for half their fleet. What could they possibly contribute to a weapons development project? Dr. Veltar's gaseous form rippled with what might have been amusement. I've read the reports from their homeworld. They're still recovering from multiple global conflicts fought with projectile weapons and explosive devices. Hardly the technological sophistication we need. Besides, added Chief Engineer Stoneheart, they've only been part of the Coalition for 30 years. They don't have access to our advanced research databases or manufacturing capabilities. Even if they wanted to help, they lack the infrastructure. Pipka's skin darkened to a deeper blue, a sign of embarrassment among her species. I just thought maybe a fresh perspective might help. Sometimes outsiders see solutions that experts miss. Zarath considered the suggestion. The humans were indeed primitive by galactic standards. Their technology was crude. Their society was chaotic, and their military tactics seemed to rely more on aggression than strategy. But something nagged at her memory about the human representative who had visited the station last month. Ambassador Sarah Chen had been polite and diplomatic during the formal meetings, But Zarath remembered catching glimpses of something else during informal conversations. The human had asked strange questions about coalition defensive strategies, probed for details about weapons development timelines, and shown an unusual interest in the station's manufacturing capabilities. At the time, Zarath had assumed it was typical human curiosity about advanced technology. Now she wondered if there might have been more to those questions. What exactly do we know about human military capabilities? She asked the room. General Corax pulled up a holographic display showing Earth's technological assessment. Basic kinetic weapons, primitive energy systems, crude nuclear devices. Nothing that would scratch the paint on a devourer ship. But what about their history? Zarath pressed. Their conflicts, their innovations under pressure? Dr. Veltar's form shimmered as she accessed her memory banks. They have an unusually violent history, even by galactic standards. Constant warfare. Technological innovation driven by military necessity. Rapid adaptation to new threats. But again, all of this at a primitive technological level. The more Zarath thought about it, the more Ambassador Chen's questions made sense. The human hadn't been asking about advanced technology. She had been asking about problems, limitations, manufacturing bottlenecks. She had been thinking like someone who was used to finding solutions with limited resources. Contact Earth, Zarath decided suddenly. Request immediate assistance with our weapons development crisis. The room erupted in protests from multiple species, their various forms of communication creating a cacophony of disagreement. General Corax's roar dominated the noise. Captain, with respect, we're facing extinction in 7 days. This is not the time for diplomatic courtesy visits with primitive species. Zarath raised one of her primary arms for silence. General, we've just established that our 12 most advanced civilizations cannot solve this problem with conventional thinking. Perhaps it's time to try unconventional thinking. She turned to Pipka. Send the message immediately. Highest priority. Tell them we need their help with weapons development. And we need it now. As the communication went out across the vast distances of space, Zarath couldn't help but wonder if she had just made the biggest mistake of her career, or if desperate times really did call for desperate measures. The fate of 17 billion sentient beings might depend on the answer from a species that most of the galaxy considered barely civilized. Make a weapon! Part 2, the response from Earth came faster than anyone expected. Within 6 hours of sending their desperate plea for help, Captain Zarath received a priority transmission that made her question whether the humans had truly understood the gravity of their situation. Captain, Communications Officer Pipka announced, her blue skin still pale from stress. We're receiving an incoming vessel from Earth. They're requesting immediate docking clearance. General Corax looked up from his tactical displays with disbelief. Already? How is that possible? The nearest human vessel was 3 systems away. According to their transmission, they had a ship in the area, Pipka replied, checking her instruments twice to make sure she wasn't mistaken. They'll be here in 2 hours. Dr. Veltar's gaseous form rippled with skepticism. 2 hours from receiving our message to arriving at our station? Either they were already en route, or they have faster ships than our intelligence reports suggest. Zarath felt a mix of hope and apprehension. The speed of the response was encouraging, but she worried about what one human ship could possibly contribute to their crisis. Still, she had committed to this course of action. When the human vessel docked, Zarath was surprised by its appearance. Unlike the sleek, efficient designs favored by most coalition species, the human ship looked utilitarian and rugged. Its hull showed signs of modification and repair, with additional equipment bolted to the exterior in ways that would horrify most engineers. The airlock opened with a mechanical hiss, and 3 humans stepped onto the station. The first was a woman in her 50s with graying hair and intense brown eyes. She wore a simple uniform with minimal decoration, but her bearing suggested significant authority. Behind her came 2 younger humans, a man and a woman, both carrying large cases that seemed surprisingly heavy. I'm Admiral Rebecca Santos, Earth Defense Force, the older woman announced without preamble. I understand you have a weapons development emergency. Zarath studied the human admiral carefully. Despite her species' primitive technology, Admiral Santos carried herself with the confidence of someone who had faced impossible odds before. Admiral, thank you for responding so quickly. I'm Captain Zarath, Station Commander. I must be honest, we weren't expecting such a rapid response. When someone sends a message about needing weapons to fight extinction, we take it seriously, Admiral Santos replied. This is Dr. James Park, our weapons engineer, and Lieutenant Maria Rodriguez, our tactical specialist. Now tell us about these devourers. As they walked toward the war room, Zareth explained the situation. The devourers' superior technology, their 7-day ultimatum, the Coalition's inability to develop effective weapons in time. Admiral Santos listened without interruption, occasionally asking pointed questions about specific technical details. When they entered the war room, the assembled alien representatives stared at the humans with expressions ranging from polite skepticism to barely concealed disdain. General Corax's massive frame dominated one side of the room, while the other species had arranged themselves according to their various environmental needs. Honorable representatives, Zareth announced. May I present Admiral Santos and her team from Earth. The introductions were formal and brief. Zareth could sense the barely contained frustration from the alien representatives. They were facing extinction, and they had to waste time with diplomatic niceties for a primitive species. Dr. Veltar spoke first, her melodic voice carrying undertones of impatience. Admiral Santos, while we appreciate Earth's willingness to assist, I feel I should explain the scale of our problem. The Devourers possess technology that can neutralize anything in our current arsenal. We need weapons that can penetrate quantum-level shielding, overcome adaptive defensive systems, and deliver enough energy to damage vessels the size of small moons. I see, Admiral Santos replied calmly. And what weapons are you currently trying to develop? Chief Engineer Stoneheart stepped forward, his rocky exterior creaking as he moved. We have several theoretical projects. The quantum disruption cannon requires 15 years of development and testing. The molecular disintegration beam needs advanced particle accelerators that we don't have time to build. The gravitational wave projector exists only in mathematical models. Admiral Santos nodded thoughtfully. Dr. Park, would you show them what we brought? The young man stepped forward and opened one of the heavy cases. Inside, nestled in protective foam, were several objects that looked disappointingly mundane to the assembled aliens. Metal cylinders, electronic components, and what appeared to be explosive devices. These are weapons? General Corax's voice carried obvious disappointment. Admiral, with respect, we've moved beyond explosive devices. These wouldn't even register on Devourer sensors. Dr. Park smiled and pulled out one of the metal cylinders. This is a shaped charge anti-tank round, designed to penetrate heavy armor. We call it a heat round. Dr. Veltar's form shimmered with confusion. I don't understand. How does an explosive device relate to quantum-level shielding? It doesn't, Admiral Santos replied. But before we talk about exotic technologies, I'd like to understand something about these devourers. Have any of you actually studied their tactical patterns? The room fell silent. Chief Engineer Stoneheart spoke slowly. We focused on the technological challenges. Their weapons are too advanced. Their shields are impenetrable. The tactical analysis seemed secondary to the technological gap. Dr. Park, Admiral Santos said, show them the recordings. The human weapons engineer activated a portable display unit. Holographic images filled the air, showing detailed breakdowns of Devourer ship movements, formation patterns, and attack sequences from previous battles. We've analyzed every recorded engagement between the Devourers and Coalition forces, Dr. Park explained. Their technology is indeed superior, but their tactics are remarkably conservative. They rely entirely on their technological advantage. Lieutenant Rodriguez stepped forward. They use the same attack patterns every time. Same formation spacing, same approach vectors, same target prioritization. It's like they've never faced an enemy that required tactical adaptation. General Corax studied the tactical displays with growing interest. Despite his skepticism about human technology, he was a career military officer who understood the value of good intelligence. These patterns, they do seem rigid, but what does this matter if we can't penetrate their defenses? Admiral Santos smiled for the first time since arriving. General, what if I told you that we don't need to penetrate their defenses? The room erupted in confused voices as multiple species tried to speak at once. Dr. Veltar's form brightened with what might have been excitement or confusion. Admiral, that's impossible. If we can't damage their ships— Who said anything about damaging their ships? Admiral Santos interrupted. Dr. Park explained the doctrine. The young engineer pulled out another device from the case. The Devourers have superior technology, but they still need to obey the laws of physics. They still need power sources, communication systems, sensor arrays. They still need to coordinate their attacks. And most importantly, they still need to breathe. Zareth felt her understanding shift as the implications became clear. The humans weren't thinking about building bigger weapons to overwhelm superior defenses. They were thinking about finding vulnerabilities that superior technology couldn't eliminate. "You're talking about asymmetric warfare," she said slowly. "Exactly," Admiral Santos confirmed. "Your people have been trying to fight a technological war against a technologically superior enemy. That's a losing strategy. But if you fight a different kind of war altogether..." General Corax's eyes widened as he began to understand. "You're not planning to build weapons to destroy their ships. You're planning to build weapons to disable their capabilities. Among other things," Lieutenant Rodriguez said with a grin that somehow managed to be both friendly and predatory. "Admiral, should we show them the list?" Admiral Santos nodded. Dr. Park activated another display and a long list of items appeared in the air. The alien representative stared at the holographic text with growing amazement. 47 different weapon systems, Admiral Santos announced, all designed, tested, and ready for immediate production using materials and manufacturing capabilities already available on this station. The war room fell completely silent except for the humming of life support systems. 47 weapons. The 12 most advanced species in the Coalition had been unable to develop a single effective weapon in 3 days, and the humans had arrived with 47. Chief Engineer Stoneheart's rocky voice cracked slightly as he spoke. How is this possible?" Admiral Santos looked around the room at the assembled representatives of 12 different civilizations, each staring at her with expressions of disbelief and dawning hope. "Because," she said simply, "we've been making weapons a lot longer than we've been making friends." "Make a weapon!" Part 3, the list of 47 weapon systems hung in the air like a constellation of impossible hope. Each entry on the holographic display represented a different approach to warfare. From electromagnetic pulse mines to kinetic kill vehicles to something called tactical nutrition disruption systems that made several alien representatives visibly uncomfortable. Dr. Veltar's gaseous form had brightened considerably as she studied the display. "Admiral Santos, these designs, many of them utilize principles we hadn't considered. This electromagnetic warfare suite, for instance. We focused on energy weapons, but we never thought about simply disrupting their electrical systems." "That's because your people think like engineers," Lieutenant Rodriguez explained. "Engineers try to build better systems. Soldiers try to break the enemy's systems." General Corax had been studying the tactical implications with growing excitement. His massive frame leaned forward as he pointed to one particular entry. "These swarm drones could overwhelm their point defenses through sheer numbers rather than trying to overpower them with individual units." "Exactly," Dr. Park confirmed. "The Devourer's defensive systems are designed to handle conventional threats. They can track and destroy a few dozen missiles, but what about 10,000 small, fast-moving targets attacking from multiple vectors?" Chief Engineer Stoneheart's rocky exterior had developed several new cracks which Zareth recognized as a sign of extreme stress in his species. "But the manufacturing requirements? Some of these designs would require retooling our entire industrial base. We don't have time." Admiral Santos smiled knowingly. "That's where you're wrong, Chief. Dr. Park, show them the production analysis." The weapons engineer manipulated the display, bringing up detailed manufacturing specifications for each weapon system. "Every design on this list can be produced using equipment and materials already available on this station, or easily obtainable from Coalition suppliers. No exotic materials, no revolutionary manufacturing techniques. We've been building weapons with whatever we could find for thousands of years," Admiral Santos added. "Steel, aluminum, common explosives, basic electronics. We learned a long time ago that the best weapon is the one you can actually build, deploy, and maintain in the field." Pipka had been quietly analyzing the technical specifications on her personal display. "Admiral, these designs are remarkably elegant in their simplicity, but I have to ask, how did humans develop such diverse weapon systems when your technology is supposedly primitive?" The question hung in the air with uncomfortable weight. Zareth could see the other representatives considering the same issue. If humans were as primitive as Coalition intelligence suggested, how could they have developed dozens of advanced weapon systems? Admiral Santos exchanged glances with her team before answering. Because intelligence reports tend to focus on what a species can build, not what they know how to build. Earth has spent the last 50 years since joining the Coalition, carefully studying every piece of technology we've encountered. We've been learning, adapting, and preparing. Preparing for what? General Corax asked suspiciously. For exactly this situation, Lieutenant Rodriguez replied bluntly. A technologically superior enemy threatening human colonies. We knew that eventually, we'd face something we couldn't match with conventional technology, so we developed unconventional solutions. Dr. Veltar's form rippled with what might have been admiration or concern. You've been planning for war against unknown enemies? We've been planning for survival, Admiral Santos corrected. There's a difference. Zareth felt a chill run through her exoskeleton. The implications were staggering. While the Coalition species had spent decades focusing on scientific advancement and peaceful cooperation, the humans had been quietly preparing for conflict. It explained Admiral Santos's rapid response, the prepositioned ship, the ready-made weapons designs. How many of these weapons can we actually produce in the remaining time? She asked, trying to focus on practical matters. Dr. Park consulted his portable computer. Given your station's manufacturing capabilities, we can have the first batch of EMP mines ready in 18 hours. The swarm drones will take about 36 hours for the first 1,000 units. The kinetic kill vehicles need 48 hours for initial deployment. That's impossible, Chief Engineer Stoneheart protested. Complex weapon systems require months of testing, quality control, safety verification. Not if you're willing to accept a 10% failure rate, Admiral Santos replied matter-of-factly. Perfect weapons delivered too late are worse than imperfect weapons delivered on time. The room fell silent as the alien representatives processed this concept. In Coalition culture, technological perfection was valued above almost everything else. The idea of deliberately deploying weapons with known failure rates was alien to their thinking. General Corax was the first to speak. Admiral, are you suggesting we deploy untested weapons against an enemy that has destroyed 17 civilizations? I'm suggesting we deploy weapons that work 90% of the time against an enemy that expects them 0% of the time, Admiral Santos corrected. Surprise is a weapon too, General. The Devourers have never faced an enemy that didn't try to match their technology. They won't know how to respond to weapons they've never seen before. Dr. Veltar had been analyzing the weapons list with increasing fascination. These psychological warfare systems, they're designed to disrupt enemy morale and decision-making processes. Humans discovered long ago that wars are won in the mind as much as on the battlefield, Lieutenant Rodriguez explained. If we can make the Devourers uncertain, confused, or afraid, their technological advantage becomes less relevant. But they're not human, Pipka pointed out. How can psychological warfare work against an alien species? Fear is universal, Admiral Santos replied. Every sentient species understands the concept of being hunted. The trick is making the hunter feel like prey. Zareth studied the human admiral with new respect. Behind the simple uniform and straightforward manner was a mind that thought about warfare in ways the Coalition had never considered. It was both impressive and slightly terrifying. Admiral, I need to ask a direct question, she said carefully. If humans have been developing these weapon systems for 50 years, why haven't you shared this technology with the Coalition? The question created an uncomfortable tension in the room. The three humans exchanged glances before Admiral Santos answered. Because the Coalition never asked for weapons, she said simply. You asked for peaceful technology, scientific knowledge, cultural exchange. When we offered to share military innovations, we were politely told that the Coalition had moved beyond such primitive concerns. General Corax's fur bristled with embarrassment. The Integration Committee believed that human military technology was too crude to be useful. They were right, Dr. Park admitted. Our weapons are crude compared to your energy systems and quantum mechanics, but sometimes crude weapons are exactly what you need. Chief Engineer Stoneheart had been studying the production schedules with growing amazement. These manufacturing timelines, they assume round-the-clock production, multiple shifts, emergency protocols. Our workers aren't accustomed to such intense schedules. Then we'll show them, Admiral Santos replied. My crew has been assembling weapons under combat conditions for decades. We'll work alongside your people, share our techniques, get everything built on time. And if it doesn't work? Dr. Veltar asked quietly. If these weapons fail against the Devourers? Admiral Santos looked around the room at the representatives of 12 different species, each one depending on her people to save them from extinction. Then we'll have failed fighting instead of died waiting, she said, and sometimes that makes all the difference. The war room erupted in activity as species that had never worked together began coordinating the largest weapons production effort in Coalition history. 47 different systems, thousands of individual components, millions of manufacturing steps, all to be completed in less than 4 days. As alien engineers huddled with human technicians and military officers planned coordinated attacks, Zareth couldn't help but wonder what other surprises humanity had been quietly preparing during their 50 years of peaceful cooperation with the galaxy. She had a feeling she was about to find out. Make a weapon. Part 4, the station's manufacturing sectors had been transformed into something resembling controlled chaos. Zareth moved through the corridors watching as her orderly, efficient facility became a sprawling weapons factory that operated at a pace no Coalition engineer had thought possible. In Manufacturing Bay 7, she found Chief Engineer Stoneheart working alongside Dr. Park on the electromagnetic pulse mines. The builder's massive stone hands moved with surprising delicacy as he assembled the electronic components under the human's guidance. The frequency modulation must be precisely calibrated, Dr. Park explained patiently. Too low and their shields will absorb it. Too high and it won't penetrate their hull plating. Stoneheart's rocky face showed concentration as he adjusted the settings. This seems unnecessarily complex for a simple explosive device. It's not meant to explode, Dr. Park corrected. It's meant to make their ships forget how to work. Much more effective than just blowing holes in them. Nearby, a team of WISP technicians were learning to assemble swarm drones under Lieutenant Rodriguez's supervision. Their gaseous forms allowed them to work inside the delicate electronics without risk of contamination, making them surprisingly effective at the precision assembly work. Each drone only needs to survive for 60 seconds, Rodriguez explained to Dr. Veltar. They don't need to be perfect. They just need to be fast, numerous, and unpredictable. This contradicts everything we know about proper engineering principles, Dr. Veltar replied, but her tone suggested fascination rather than criticism. Good engineering and good warfare aren't always the same thing, Rodriguez observed. Sometimes you need something that works once immediately, rather than something that works perfectly forever. Zareth continued her tour, finding similar scenes throughout the station. Kronak warriors were learning to operate kinetic kill vehicles that used brute force rather than sophisticated guidance systems. Zephyrian communication specialists were setting up psychological warfare broadcasts designed to confuse and demoralize. Even the usually peaceful Altrurian healers were working on what the humans called non-lethal incapacitation systems. In the main assembly area, Admiral Santos stood before a massive holographic display showing the production status of all 47 weapon systems. The progress indicators moved steadily upward as thousands of individual components came together into functional weapons. Admiral, Zareth approached, I must say, your people's efficiency is remarkable. We're ahead of schedule on nearly every system. Experience, Admiral Santos replied without taking her eyes off the display. We've had to do this before, just not at this scale. Before? When? Admiral Santos finally turned to face her. Captain, did you really think Earth spent 50 years as a coalition member without making any enemies? We've faced hostile first contact scenarios 12 times, 3 attempted invasions, 2 colonial wars, and 1 situation very similar to this one. Zareth felt her mandibles click together nervously. The coalition has no record of human military conflicts since integration. Because we handled them quietly, Admiral Santos explained. The coalition prizes peace and stability. When problems arose that threatened that stability, we dealt with them before they became coalition problems. The implications hit Zareth like a physical blow. While the coalition had enjoyed 50 years of peaceful expansion and scientific advancement, the humans had been fighting a shadow war to protect that peace. They had been the warriors so the other species could remain scientists and philosophers. How many times? She asked quietly. How many times what? How many times have you saved us without us knowing? Admiral Santos considered the question carefully. Does it matter? The point is that we're here now, when you need us. Before Zarath could respond, General Corax's voice boomed across the assembly area. "Admiral, we have a problem." They rushed to the tactical station where the Kronak general was studying incoming sensor data. His massive frame was tense with concern as he pointed to the displays. "The Devourer fleet has moved closer. They're now only 2 days out from the first inhabited world in this system." Admiral Santos studied the tactical information with professional calm. "They're accelerating their timeline. Probably getting impatient. Can we accelerate ours?" Zarath asked. Dr. Park looked up from his nearby workstation. "We can have the first wave of weapons ready in 12 hours if we skip the final testing phase. But that increases the failure rate to maybe 20%. 20% failure rate or 100% extinction," Admiral Santos observed. "Easy choice." General Corax wasn't convinced. "Admiral, deploying untested weapons against an enemy of this caliber is exactly what they won't expect," Admiral Santos finished. "General, conventional military wisdom says never deploy untested equipment. But conventional military wisdom also says never fight an enemy with superior technology. Since we're already breaking one rule, we might as well break both." Pipka had been monitoring communications from her station nearby. "Admiral, we're receiving a transmission from the lead Devourer ship." "Put it through," Admiral Santos ordered. The holographic display shifted to show a creature that defied easy description. It seemed to be composed of shifting geometric patterns that hurt to look at directly. When it spoke, the words appeared as translated text rather than audible sound. "Coalition forces, we have observed increased activity at your station. You have 36 standard hours to complete your weapon development and present it for inspection. If your creation is deemed inadequate, we will begin planetary sterilization immediately." The transmission ended, leaving the assembly area in stunned silence. "They want to inspect our weapons?" Dr. Veltar's gaseous form rippled with confusion. "What kind of military force announces their evaluation criteria to the enemy?" "The kind that's never faced real opposition," Lieutenant Rodriguez answered grimly. "They're so confident in their superiority that they're treating this like a test rather than a war." Admiral Santos studied the tactical displays with renewed intensity. "This changes things. We can't just deploy weapons against them. We need to convince them that we've developed something worthy of their attention." "How do we do that?" Zarath asked. "We give them exactly what they expect," Admiral Santos replied with a smile that somehow managed to be both reassuring and predatory. "Dr. Park, how quickly can we build one of those quantum disruption cannons?" The young engineer looked confused. "Admiral, we don't have quantum disruption technology. That was one of their 15-year projects." "I know. How quickly can we build something that looks like a quantum disruption cannon?" Understanding dawned across Dr. Park's face. Oh, that's brilliant. Give me 6 hours and access to their fabrication equipment." General Corax was following the conversation with growing excitement. "You're going to present them with a fake superweapon while hiding the real weapons. The best place to hide 47 needles is in a haystack with one very obvious piece of metal," Admiral Santos confirmed. "They'll focus all their attention on evaluating our quantum disruption cannon while our real weapons deploy around their fleet, Chief." Engineer Stoneheart's rocky exterior had developed what might have been a grin. "This is either the most brilliant tactical deception I've ever witnessed, or the most elaborate form of suicide." "Sometimes there's not much difference," Admiral Santos admitted. "Dr. Park, start building our fake superweapon. Make it impressive, complicated, and completely non-functional." Everyone else were moving to emergency production schedules. 47 weapon systems in 36 hours. The assembly area erupted in activity as thousands of beings from 12 different species worked together with desperate efficiency. Machines that had never operated at full capacity roared to life. Assembly lines that had been designed for careful, methodical production were reconfigured for speed and volume. As Zarath watched the organized chaos around her, she realized that the humans had done more than bring weapons designs to their crisis. They had brought something the Coalition had never truly possessed: the knowledge of how to fight for survival. In 36 hours, they would discover whether that knowledge was enough to save 17 billion lives from an enemy that had never tasted defeat. The countdown had begun, and there was no turning back. "Make a weapon." Part 5. The 36 hours passed in a blur of welding sparks, assembly lines, and barely controlled panic. When the Devourer inspection ship approached the station, Every being aboard knew that their survival depended on the most elaborate deception in galactic history. Zarath stood in the main hangar bay alongside Admiral Santos, watching as the alien vessel docked with mechanical precision. The Devourer ship was unlike anything she had ever seen, a crystalline structure that seemed to bend light around itself, creating optical illusions that made her eyes water. "Remember," Admiral Santos said quietly, "confidence is key. We're not hiding weapons from them. We're proudly presenting our greatest achievement." The fake quantum disruption cannon dominated the center of the hangar bay. Dr. Park had outdone himself, creating a device that looked appropriately advanced and mysterious. Crystalline focusing arrays surrounded a central core that pulsed with harmless but impressive energy patterns. Banks of computers displayed scrolling equations that meant nothing but looked suitably complex. "It's actually quite beautiful," Dr. Veltar observed, her gaseous form shimmering with nervous energy. "I almost believe it could disrupt quantum fields." "The best lies contain elements of truth," Admiral Santos replied. "The focusing arrays are real quantum mechanics equipment. They just don't do what we're claiming they do." The Devourer inspection team emerged from their ship, and Zarath had to suppress an involuntary shudder. Up close, they were even more disturbing than their transmitted image had suggested. Their geometric forms shifted constantly, creating a disorienting effect that made it difficult to focus on them directly. The lead inspector approached the quantum disruption cannon with what might have been interest. When it spoke, the translated words appeared in the air as glowing text. "Explain the operational principles of this device." Dr. Park stepped forward with convincing confidence. "The weapon generates a cascading quantum field collapse that destabilizes the molecular bonds in target materials. The crystalline array focuses the effect into a coherent beam capable of penetrating any known defensive system." The inspector circled the device, its geometric form analyzing every component. "Demonstrate the targeting system." Of course, Dr. Park activated a series of displays showing targeting calculations for objects throughout the system. The mathematics were real even if the weapon was fake. The system can lock onto targets at ranges up to 50 million kilometers with precision, down to the molecular level. More inspectors emerged from their ship, studying different aspects of the weapon. They spent considerable time examining the power systems, the control interfaces, and the theoretical output calculations. Zarath could see Admiral Santos watching their movements carefully, noting how they positioned themselves and what seemed to draw their attention. "Energy requirements?" one inspector asked. Chief Engineer Stoneheart answered with practiced ease. "The device draws power directly from the station's main reactor. Full charge cycle requires approximately 2 hours, but the weapon can fire continuously for up to 30 minutes before requiring regeneration." The lead inspector's form seemed to brighten with what might have been approval. "This represents a significant advancement beyond your previous technological capabilities. How is this development achieved in such a brief time frame?" Admiral Santos stepped forward smoothly. "Our greatest scientists work together, combining knowledge from all coalition species. We've discovered that cooperation and shared expertise can accelerate innovation far beyond what any single species could achieve alone." It wasn't entirely a lie. The station had indeed seen unprecedented cooperation over the past 36 hours, just not in the way the Devourers assumed. The inspection continued for 2 hours. The Devourers examined every visible component of the fake weapon, ran their own scans and tests, and demanded detailed explanations of theoretical principles. Throughout it all, the coalition representatives maintained their confident facade while carefully avoiding any demonstration that would reveal the weapon's true nature. Finally, the lead inspector stepped back from the device. "This weapon represents adequate innovation given your species' limitations. It will be sufficient for the first phase of evaluation." "First phase?" Zarath asked, trying to keep her voice steady. "You will deploy this weapon against our advanced scout. If it performs as claimed, you will proceed to the second phase of evaluation. If it fails, planetary sterilization will commence immediately." The implications hit the assembled coalition representatives like a physical blow. The Devourers weren't just inspecting their weapon. They were demanding a live demonstration against one of their own ships. Admiral Santos maintained her composure admirably. "When will this test take place?" "Now." The hangar bay erupted in controlled chaos as the inspection team returned to their ship, and the coalition forces scrambled to prepare for a demonstration they couldn't possibly perform. The fake quantum disruption cannon looked impressive, but it couldn't actually fire at anything, let alone damage a devourer vessel. "Admiral," General Corax approached with barely controlled panic. "How do we demonstrate a weapon that doesn't work?" "We don't," Admiral Santos replied calmly. "We demonstrate the weapons that do work and make it look like the cannon did it." She activated her communication device. "All units, this is Admiral Santos. Operation Haystack is now active. Repeat, Operation Haystack is active." Throughout the station and in the space around it, the real weapons began moving into position. Swarm drones launched from hidden bays, their tiny forms invisible to most sensors. Electromagnetic pulse mines drifted toward the Devourer scout ship on trajectories that would appear random. Kinetic kill vehicles accelerated from concealed launch points, their approach masked by the normal traffic around the station. The Devourer scout ship positioned itself exactly where Admiral Santos had predicted it would, close enough to observe the test, far enough to escape if necessary, and in perfect position for the 47 weapon systems that were already surrounding it. "Target acquired," Dr. Park announced from the fake cannon's control station. "Quantum field generators at full power. Focusing array aligned. Ready to fire on your command." The lead inspector's translated words appeared in the air. "Proceed with demonstration." Admiral Santos took a deep breath. Everything depended on the next few minutes. "Fire!" Dr. Park activated every spectacular visual effect they had built into the fake weapon. The crystalline arrays blazed with brilliant light. Energy patterns raced along the focusing chambers, and the entire device hummed with apparent power. A beam of harmless but impressive-looking energy lanced out toward the scout ship. At the same moment, 47 different weapon systems struck the Devourer vessel from every direction. The electromagnetic pulse mines created cascading electrical failures throughout the ship's systems. The swarm drones overwhelmed the point defenses through sheer numbers, striking critical sensor arrays and communication equipment. Kinetic kill vehicles punched through hull plating that had been weakened by targeted molecular disruptors. To any observer, it looked like the quantum disruption cannon had delivered a devastating attack that crippled the scout ship in seconds. The Devourer vessel tumbled through space, its crystalline hull flickering as internal systems failed. Emergency power systems activated, but even they seemed to struggle against the cascade of failures. The inspection team stared at their crippled scout ship with what might have been shock. For several long moments, the hangar bay was completely silent, except for the humming of the fake weapon as it powered down. Finally, the lead inspector turned toward the coalition representatives. Its geometric form seemed somehow diminished, less imposing than before. "This weapon exceeds our evaluation parameters. Phase 2 will commence in 72 hours. Prepare for full-scale deployment against our main fleet." The inspection team departed without another word, leaving the coalition representatives staring at each other in stunned amazement. "Did we just," Pipka started to ask, "convince the most advanced military force in the galaxy that we have a superweapon?" Admiral Santos finished. "Yes, we did." General Corax was studying the tactical displays with professional admiration. "Admiral, that was the most brilliant piece of military deception I've ever witnessed." "It was also the easy part," Admiral Santos replied grimly. "In 72 hours, we have to do it again against their entire fleet. And they'll be watching much more carefully the second time." As the coalition forces began preparing for the real battle to come, Zareth couldn't help but wonder what other impossible victories the humans might have, hidden in their arsenal of unconventional warfare. She was about to find out whether 47 weapons could defeat an empire that had consumed 17 civilizations. Make a Weapon, Part 6. The 72 hours that followed were the most intense period of military preparation in coalition history. Every manufacturing facility in the system had been converted to weapons production, churning out thousands of additional swarm drones, kinetic kill vehicles, and electromagnetic warfare systems. But Admiral Santos knew that numbers alone wouldn't be enough against the full Devourer fleet. "They'll be expecting the quantum disruption cannon," she explained to the assembled War Council. "But they'll also be watching for anything unusual. We can't rely on the same level of surprise we had with the scout ship." The main display showed the approaching Devourer fleet in all its terrifying glory. 47 massive vessels, each the size of a small city, moving in perfect formation toward the inhabited worlds of the system. Their crystalline hulls reflected the light of the local star, creating a sight that was both beautiful and ominous. "How do we fight something like that?" Dr. Veltar asked, her gaseous form flickering with anxiety. "The same way humans have always fought superior enemies," Lieutenant Rodriguez replied. "We changed the rules." Admiral Santos activated a new tactical display. The Devourers think they're coming to observe a weapons demonstration. Instead, they're walking into the largest military trap in galactic history. The plan was audacious in its complexity. The fake quantum disruption cannon would again provide the visual focus, but this time it would be supported by a three-dimensional battlefield that extended throughout the entire system. Weapons platforms hidden among asteroids, mines attached, to derelict ships, drones disguised as space debris, everything positioned to create a killing field that the Devourers wouldn't recognize until it was too late. "The key is simultaneous activation," Admiral Santos explained. "If even one weapon system activates early, they'll detect the trap and adapt. We get one chance, and it has to be perfect." General Corax studied the deployment patterns with growing appreciation. "Admiral, this isn't just a military operation, it's a work of art." "War often is," Admiral Santos replied. "The ugly kind of art that nobody wants to create but sometimes has to." The Devourer fleet arrived exactly on schedule, their massive ships taking position in what they clearly considered a safe observation zone. They had learned from the scout ship encounter, maintaining greater distance and spreading their formation to reduce vulnerability to area effect weapons. "They're adapting," Chief Engineer Stoneheart observed, "but they're still thinking in terms of conventional weapons, which means they're still not thinking like humans," Admiral Santos said with satisfaction. The lead Devourer ship transmitted their demands. The quantum disruption cannon would demonstrate its effectiveness against a series of progressively more challenging targets, culminating in a direct assault on one of their heavily shielded vessels. Any failure would result in immediate planetary bombardment. "Acknowledged," Admiral Santos replied to the transmission. "Beginning demonstration sequence now." The fake weapon began its impressive display of lights and energy patterns, while the real weapons moved into final position. This time, Admiral Santos had learned from the scout ship encounter. The Devourers would be watching for external attacks, so the real weapons would come from directions they wouldn't expect. Target 1. Asteroid designated 77 Alpha, Dr. Park announced from the weapon controls. The quantum disruption cannon fired its harmless but spectacular beam at a distant asteroid. At the same moment, a kinetic kill vehicle that had been hidden inside the asteroid detonated, creating a massive explosion that vaporized the entire rocky body. The Devourers registered satisfaction with the demonstration. Their formation remained stable, confident in their ability to observe and evaluate. Target 2. Derelict cargo vessel at coordinates Mark 49er. Again the cannon fired, and again, hidden weapons created the illusion of devastating power. This time, electromagnetic pulse charges hidden throughout the derelict ship created a chain reaction that made it appear as though the vessel had been disintegrated at the molecular level. Target 3. Begin primary demonstration against Devourer evaluation vessel. This was the critical moment. The designated Devourer ship, a massive crystalline construct bristling with defensive systems, moved into position for what it believed would be a controlled test of coalition weapon capabilities. Admiral Santos took a deep breath. "All units, this is actual. Execute Operation 47. I repeat, execute Operation 47. What happened next would be analyzed by military historians for centuries to come. The fake quantum disruption cannon fired its impressive but harmless beam directly at the evaluation vessel. At precisely the same instant, every weapon system that humanity had deployed activated simultaneously. Electromagnetic pulse mines that had been disguised as navigation beacons created cascading power failures throughout the Devourer fleet. Swarm drones that had been hiding among the asteroids emerged in clouds of thousands, overwhelming defensive systems through sheer numbers. Kinetic kill vehicles struck from angles that the Devourers had never considered. Their approach vectors, disguised by the gravitational shadows of planets and moons, But the masterstroke came from the weapons that the Coalition representatives had initially dismissed as impossible: the psychological warfare systems. Lieutenant Rodriguez had spent weeks studying Devourer communication patterns, identifying the frequencies and protocols they used for fleet coordination. As the physical weapons struck their targets, the psychological warfare broadcasts began flooding those frequencies with carefully crafted messages designed to create confusion and panic. Fleet command is compromised, the false messages declared in perfect Devourer communication protocols. Retreat to emergency positions. All ships implement individual defensive measures. Coordination systems have been infiltrated. The effect was instantaneous and devastating. The Devourer fleet, which had operated with mechanical precision for centuries, suddenly found itself receiving contradictory orders from what appeared to be their own command structure. Ships that had never faced a real threat began implementing emergency protocols designed for scenarios they had never actually encountered. As electromagnetic failures cascaded through their systems and thousands of small weapons overwhelmed their defenses, the psychological warfare broadcasts convinced individual ship commanders that they were facing a coordinated assault by an enemy that had somehow compromised their entire command structure. The perfect formation dissolved into chaos as ships tried to implement conflicting emergency procedures while dealing with systems failures they couldn't understand. The evaluation vessel, struck by 17 different weapon systems simultaneously, tumbled helplessly through space as its crew struggled to comprehend what had happened. "Impossible," Dr. Veltar whispered as she watched the tactical displays. "They're retreating." And they were. The most advanced military force in the galaxy, faced with an enemy that fought in ways they had never encountered, was withdrawing from a battle they had been certain they would win. Admiral Santos watched the Devourer fleet limping away from the system, their perfect formations replaced by desperate attempts to maintain basic propulsion and life support. "Signal all units, cease fire, let them go." "Let them go?" General Corax looked confused. "Admiral, we have them at a disadvantage. This might be our only chance to destroy them completely." "General, what do you think will happen if we destroy their fleet?" The Kronak warrior considered the question. "Their empire will send another fleet to investigate." "A bigger fleet," Admiral Santos confirmed, "with specific intelligence about our capabilities and tactics. We'd win this battle and lose the war. But if we let them retreat, they'll report that they encountered an enemy with unknown capabilities and suffered significant losses attempting to evaluate their weapons," Admiral Santos explained. "That will make their empire cautious. Cautious empires don't launch genocidal campaigns. They negotiate." Zarath understood the deeper strategy. "You're not trying to defeat them militarily. You're trying to make them respect us enough to leave us alone." "Exactly. The goal was never to destroy the Devourers. The goal was to survive their attention." As the last Devourer ship disappeared into faster-than-light travel, the Coalition forces began the massive task of collecting their deployed weapons and assessing the results of their unprecedented victory. "Admiral," Pipka approached with a communication pad, "we're receiving messages from across the galaxy. Word of the battle is spreading. Everyone wants to know how we defeated the Devourers." Admiral Santos smiled. "Tell them the truth. We had better weapons." "All 47 of them?" Dr. Park asked with a grin. "All 47 of them," Admiral Santos confirmed. Later, as the celebration continued throughout the station, Zarath found Admiral Santos standing alone in the observation deck, watching the stars where the Devourer fleet had disappeared. "Admiral, I have to ask," Zarath said quietly. "How long did you know this day would come?" "From the moment Earth joined the Coalition," Admiral Santos replied. "We knew that eventually, someone would threaten what we had helped build. We just wanted to be ready when that day arrived." "And the 47 weapon systems?" 47 was actually conservative. We have blueprints for over 300 different weapons. Systems, each designed for specific tactical situations. Admiral Santos turned to face Zarath. "Captain, the universe is a dangerous place. The Coalition's strength has always been its diversity, its cooperation, its shared knowledge. But sometimes someone needs to be ready to fight for those things." Zarath nodded slowly. "And humans are willing to be that someone? We're good at it. Admiral Santos replied simply. And we believe in what the coalition represents. Peace, cooperation, mutual understanding. Those are things worth fighting for. As they stood together watching the stars, Zareth realized that the 47 weapon systems had been more than just tools of war. They had been humanity's gift to the galaxy, the promise that someone was always watching, always ready, always prepared to defend the peace that everyone else took for granted. In the end, the best weapon humanity had brought to the coalition wasn't any of the 47 systems they had deployed. It was the knowledge that no one would ever again have to face extinction alone, because humans would always be ready to make whatever weapons were needed to protect their friends, even if that meant making 47 of them in less than a week.